We've all heard at least some urban legends, whether we've realized it or not. What about the ones that are so old their true history is gone? What if there are more that have been lost to the flow of time? It seems certain things in ethereal springs may be tired of being ignored, and they want attention in the worst possible ways. Let's see how Cicero and Olympia handle hometown truths. Cicero frowned in confusion and irritation as he picked up the next book from the stack. The cover was in poor shape and lacking anything to identify the title or author. Looking through the pages revealed no information about what the book was about or where it had come from. The anti-theft and cataloging labels that marked items as library property were absent. This was one of many books that had arrived in this state over the past several weeks, and all as mysterious as to their contents as this one. He placed all of them into a spare box for further inspection later. Once he finished with the returns, he made his way into the office to make a call. He needed answers to this phenomenon, and there was only one person he trusted to help. Once off the phone, he grabbed the box of mysterious manuscripts and his car keys, telling the other librarian on duty, who was leaving for lunch, on his way past the counter. He wanted to catch a certain museum employee before they left for their own lunch or got too involved in museum business. Olympia was Cicero's closest friend, and the only one he would trust with his life. She had worked at the town museum for several years, refining her natural skill to tell the difference between a true relic and a reproduction. They wasted no time in examining the books, as Cicero had mentioned them showing up on several occasions. She began gently and meticulously inspecting each book with all the care you'd expect from a trained professional. Cicero didn't doubt she would accept the challenge of this particular puzzle. It's hard to tell how many originals there are, but the contents of the journals themselves seem to be at least a few hundred years old. There are some younger ones here, but I don't see anything that's under a century old. I see no traces of anything hinting at any sort of title page or table of contents, copyright information, nothing to make me believe otherwise. And why would someone leave these at the library? There's nothing on record of these books there, he responded. Well, either it's a simple case of human error, or there's something more to all of this than meets the eye. She returned to her investigation of the journals, beginning to separate them into different piles by legibility, then by approximate age. Paper inks, methods of binding always changed over time, so it was just easier for her workload to separate them ahead of time, since she had other projects to do as well. Seeing so many like this sent a chill down her spine. She knew there was some reason for someone or something to be sending these to the library. She was going to find it. As could be expected, the overall condition varies from book to book. Some are missing pages or even entire sections. This means that some will need more scrutiny than others, she remarked. You said these just started showing up in the library after hours return box, right? That's right, started a couple of months ago. Didn't happen overnight, rather they just appeared every so often, and I thought nothing of it. Only over the last few days did I start to realize how many had built up. Olympia began to casually pace around the table, causing Cicero to smirk as he remembered their childhood days. Olympia had always loved a good mystery. In fact, it was her main reason for working at the museum rather than leaving Ethereal Springs and going out into the world beyond. The idea of solving mysteries from years past had always fascinated her. Have you tried checking the CCTV? The library doesn't have any security cameras. I knew it was built in the 19th century, but seriously? She asked, making a face that made it clear she was not at all pleased to hear that. Set up some cameras on the returns area. That may help us work out the nature of these books and their source. All right, Cicero agreed, not wishing to risk her wrath. I'll buy and install some today. Cicero and Olympia pored over every bit of information she managed to pull out of those books. They were, by Olympia's preliminary judgment, originals and very old. They held nothing more than little pieces of names, experiences, places, and regrets. With nothing but vague details, first names, and nicknames the pair had never heard of, they had little to go on. It didn't help that many of the journals had not aged very well. That's assuming all the damage to them was caused by time and not by sources yet unknown. Cicero had set up the CCTV system near the returns area, as Olympia suggested. They waited a few weeks to see results. Every time that a new journal was received through the returns box, the cameras would turn off and then turn on again when the perpetrator had already left. The duo decided it was best they do a stakeout in the library in hopes of catching the culprit themselves. Armed with nothing but caffeine, their phones, several chocolate bars, and a bag of salted peanuts, they set about their night watch of the library. "Hey, listen to this," Cicero said, shifting in his chair. "Another one has gone missing. The farrier's boy went off to hunt game and never came back. After about 4 days, the search party only turned up his rifle near Trapper's Lake." "Never heard of any Trapper's Lake before," Olympia said, nibbling on a chocolate bar while the opportunity presented itself. "The museum has a ton of artifacts from local history, but displays about local disappearances aren't part of the total collection. In fact, I don't think there is any official documentation about disappearances on the scale this suggests. We never had anything about it in school. I would have remembered this." "I was thinking the same thing," Cicero said, biting his lip and drumming his fingers on the table. "Let's make sure these journals are in fact local before we go any further." "Oh, good idea," Cicero agreed. During their search, they found very few mentions worth noting down. Cicero began putting all the surrounding resources to use. Once they had looked at everything legible in the small portion of journals, they were exhausted, but their work was far from over. Being in a library, Cicero went to the microfiche machines to search for any mentions of the known facts presented by the first journal entry they had found interesting. They found a few vague mentions of a lake and failed search parties, but no name had been attached to it in any articles the library had. There were several cases of missing children in the 1870s, though. At least a handful of them had been last seen heading in the direction of a local lake. None of the articles had a lot of information, just the children being given up for dead a few days after going missing. The maps from the approximate time frame Olympia's scrutiny had determined found no labeled lakes, but they were surprised at how many were actually in the vicinity of Ethereal Springs. Obviously, the majority had dried up over the years, or were filled in as the town expanded outward, the locals always reluctant to build any buildings above a certain height or factories, or the exact locations had gone forgotten over the years. "I knew this town was strange, but this is ridiculous," Olympia grumbled. "How in the hell can all these maps not have labels?" Frustrated, she began to pace, thinking for quite a while until she stopped, snapping her fingers as an old memory brought itself to the forefront of her mind. "Hey, remember that one story from when we were kids about a lake?" Cicero quickly deduced what she was getting at and got to his feet. He headed for one of the shelves and took down several books containing local urban legends. He placed them on the table without a word. Exhaustion did have him yawning, though, so they went out for a few minutes of fresh air and another coffee break to wake themselves up a little more before staring at more books. The evidence was quickly piling up that Olympia's hunch was right on the nose. They found more links in the chain between history and what they had grown up to believe as fiction. "All these connections, someone has to be trying to tell us something," Cicero remarked, looking up from the book he was looking at. Before Olympia could respond, the lights went out, including her lantern, which was odd considering it was battery-powered. The lights outside had gone out too. Suddenly, they heard the thumps of books being pushed into the return box, causing them to run out into the cold night air. Olympia tapped Cicero's shoulder and pointed to an obscured figure on the street across from the library. He shifted as if to shield her, not really caring when she hugged his arm and peeked around him. He knew it wasn't human. It seemed too flat, for lack of a better word, as if it had been cut from black construction paper or something. It was obvious Olympia was thinking the same thing by how she visibly shook, as if she stood on the epicenter of a low-grade earthquake that didn't reach beyond the very soles of her feet. He couldn't remember the last time either of them had been so scared. The shadowy shape didn't move. If she hadn't pointed it out, he never would have noticed it. It was just there, as if it had only benign intentions, though there was a sense of restrained malice underneath that thin layer of benevolence. As they watched the featureless form, there were only two words they could hear that had no identifiable source, a whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Keep digging. So, it seems there really is more to ethereal springs than meets the eye. What could possibly be so important that someone or something is so desperate to have out in the light? Where did all those private journals come from? Why are they suddenly popping up now? What will Cicero and Olympia find out as they dig deeper into the mysteries surrounding their community? What could the connection be between the urban legends and the history of Ethereal Springs? What secrets are hidden in Ethereal Springs? What secrets could be hiding in your town and local urban legends? Slap that subscribe button and hook that rope to the bell so you'll be notified when there is a new piece to the puzzle hidden within the series. If you liked the story, hit those like and share buttons so others can enjoy the mystery as it unfolds. Leave a comment if you wish. I'm always looking for ways to improve the quality of my writing. And remember, life would be boring without a few scares.